Hello and welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about the K9 episode, The Korven, written by Tim Pine and is directed by Carl Swiggy. This is the introduction to the Korven, which would become a prominent monster in the series. And when I started this marathon, way back in 2020, I was always worried that there would be a time where an episode comes where I would really struggle to say anything, because whilst watching it, it gave me no sort of an emotional attachment in any way, shape or form. And luckily, with Doctor Who, that has been a very rare occasion, as the series is mainly focused on singular narratives for the most part, allowing me to basically can get a lot of delve and deep into it. And only with Doctor Who usually only handling a handful of stories per series, means that each episode gets a lot of focus and a lot of time devoted to it. But seeing as K9 is a show made up of 22 episodes per its only season, in a format which most shows, specifically American shows, go through, it means that we're going to get some of these where I'm going to really struggle to just find anything really to talk about. There's no hidden meanings, there's no strong emotional hooks. There's nothing really I can really justify talking about it. So I'm just going to improvise and just hope for the best, because not to say it's a particularly bad episode by none the least. In fact, sadly, this might be the best episode yet. I mean, we had 3 episodes, and the first 2 aren't that particularly great. But this one feels a lot more focused compared to them. But it feels like it is doing literally the bare minimum. I'm struggling to even mention it. This video might be the shortest Doctor Who marathon that I make, I presume. We'll find out. We'll find out together. So, what is the story? Well, actually, we start off on a very good start, in which the Professor Griffin, and Darius, they're just having lunch. They're just enjoying themselves and stuff, when all of a sudden a creature, the Korven, appears from outside the time machine that Professor Griffith has made, and he gets kidnapped by Professor Griffith gets kidnapped by the Korven, as Darius starts to panic and starts trying to call out for help from the rest of the crew members. We see that Starkey, his name is actually Starkey, and the idea of just calling him Stark Reality is just getting really tired now, so I'm just calling him Starkey. And K9 are essentially homeless now. After the events of the last episode of K9, I was curious onto where their relationship is with the others, and it turns out they just kicked him out. He has no home, which is extremely funny when you consider what happens at the end of this episode, because in the last 2 episodes we basically learn that Starkey is basically a revolutionary. He's a hacker. He breaks into the systems, changing posters to reveal the truth about the department, the evil organization that's currently running Britain. And so Starkey is basically homeless because of that, and doesn't take refuge in Professor Griffin's house, despite the fact that nobody knew who he was there, and despite the fact that he's walking around with one of the most wanted pieces of technology at the time, K9, who doesn't do a good job of hiding himself because he's just floating around there, out and about. But the first time we see these characters, they are trying to like sneak around, and K9 can detect a invisible car, so that makes it easier for them. And we get a scene then in which, like a humorous moment, which plays into a little joke at the end of the story, in which K9 and Starkey are talking about beans, and that K9 doesn't understand the concept of cooking them, and it's just like, why does it take so long to cook? I'll just use my laser beam and then to heat it up, and when it does heat up to eating temperature, all the beans basically fly out onto the floor and onto Starkey's jacket. So Starkey is now there's no food essentially because of K9. Only for then to Geordie to suddenly appear out of nowhere. She says that it's really weird because she says that she was being told before that he had 3 secret hideouts, and this is one of them. Is it a secret hideout? He's literally in a barren forest. It's not essential. It's not, and there's nothing like there he's kept. There's nothing there that he's particularly kept. It's the stuff that he came along was the stuff that he had. Like, it's really bizarre. I don't understand, like, how is this a hiding place at all? But what can you do, innit? And she basically is like, right, we're gonna see the professor because Darius says there's something urgent, and I've also got you some food, looking after you. And K9 uses his technology to basically reveal that Geordie is blushing. And we kind of get this hint that Geordie likes Starkey here, but Starkey either isn't interested or he just can't see it for himself. Because, we'll explain it later on. And so Darius, they go into the professor's house, and Darius can't find him anywhere in the house. And it's here that we learn why in the first episode the professor seemed to not be able to leave his house. He is a massive, what's it called? Astrophobia, a fear of large in spaces and the fear of leaving your own home. He's essentially, he has a massive fear of wide spaces, like being outside and being in a situation where you can't get off, like being on like a bus in a public place, a crowded area, that kind of thing. Which I do actually like that they've given him a little bit more to do in terms of what he is as a character, but it doesn't really play into a part. It's just in this story, it's just the reason why they couldn't find him in the house. And K9 basically reveals that he can sense a particular gas, a gas to the Korven, a gas which won't be invented for another thousands of years by a race of time travelers that have conquered Earth in the far future, and that in the far future, these creatures basically want to go back in time to find this particular scientist, which turns out to be Professor Griffin, and use his mind, his memories, to create a cooling device, because these creatures survive on being cool, being in cold environments. And so we also learned that this creature can only really be hurt when he's basically taken the mind, harvesting the mind of someone else. And after he takes the mind of someone, that person is basically a corpse. now. So it's a race against time, as K9 can track the professor's movements down to, I don't know if it's in a different building. The way the scenery plans it out, it seems like it's like in the basement. So I don't know if they're still in the house or not. It looks different. Oddly enough, for the problem with the sets of the last 2 episodes, I couldn't tell if this was in the house or not. It's very bizarre. And essentially they split up, and this is what I meant about Starkey, and I'm not quite sure where he stands with Geordie, in which Darius basically, we kind of learn that Darius likes Geordie because he asks for her help first. He basically tries to get a connection there, and actually invites her at one point to live in the house with them, with the professor, because Geordie and her mother don't sometimes see eye to eye. Also, at the start of this episode, Geordie and her mother are on complete fair ground, which is really strange because she just found out in the last episode that her daughter is essentially a traitor to the cause. And I thought there would be some really interesting dynamic of the mother basically fighting with herself against the state and her daughter, like where does her allegiance lies. None of that plays into any of the story. Massively disappointed, but that could be saved up for a later episode. Hopefully, who knows? So Geordie and Darius go in one team, and Starkey and K9 go in the other. This was Darius's idea, but and Geordie is like, wouldn't it make more sense if I went with Starkey? Kind of implying like, can I be with him? But Starkey is like, no, his idea is actually better. It makes sense. So come on, K9. So I don't know if he doesn't know or if he's just not interested in Geordie at this particular moment in time. And basically, K9 keeps rephrasing that this gas will not be invented for, I think he said 3,000 years. And then all of a sudden he starts changing it to like 2,000 or 200. And Starkey kind of realizes that something isn't right, as K9 seems to be making a lot of errors. As K9 basically reveals that this gas that the Korven has created is actually interfering with his technology, and he basically goes out of action. This is a massive disappointment by the fact that K9 in 2 episodes in a row has been out of action, but it kind of makes sense because K9, for the concept of this show, is a bit overpowered. So I got a funny feeling this is going to be a recurring trope of the series where K9 will be knocked out of action at particular points so that characters can be kidnapped, characters can be suffer their flaws, and so K9 can then later on save the day. As the Korven basically finds Starkey in the basement, whatever it is, and takes over his mind so that he basically has him. It's like I find this pretty funny. I think the reason they did it is because of budgetary reasons. But instead of having them like in shackles so they don't leave or anything, you basically mind controls them to just lie on a table, but they can still talk or anything. So it's kind of funny in my opinion, that is. Now let's talk about the Korven, because this is one of the most recurring monsters in the K9 series, making their first appearance. The Korven is the species, and this is just nameless Korven. The costume looks easy as the worst looking costume so far. I think the kind of rubber that they used on the mask looks really off, and I can't tell if they tried to enhance it with CGI in some scenes. But again, I do appreciate, compared to like the others and stuff, I do appreciate the fact that they do use real costumes other than constantly just using CGI. I do appreciate it on that. In my opinion, that's always just, even if it looks terrible, that's still it still has that quality about it which just suits Doctor Who, that make it yourself kind of attitude. But in terms of the characterization of this monster, I do actually really like it here. The story never teases that they're going to become this big threat. I mean, sure, they mention that in the far future they become this evil race and will conquer the galaxy and stuff. But for this particular story, they never mention it's like this. They don't tease it for later episodes, if that makes any sense. This could have easily just been a one-off, and it wouldn't have mattered. But this character, apart from a few like slight grunts, doesn't speak and controls people through mind control. And so when people are asking it what it wants, what it needs, it just puts out its hand and mind controls them. I actually think this is a really cool idea for a villain. I think it's a shame that it's put in a story that gives it the bare minimum to do. It literally just captures the Professor and Starkey and tries to take the Professor's brain. That's literally all it does. But it's the concept of it and the fact that it's basically ripping it to its bare minimum in terms of what a villain is. It just wants the Professor. And it has this kind of demeanour about it, that this silent, controlled demeanour. When it's in the room, you take notice, essentially. And I actually really like that. I'm actually really looking forward to seeing more of the Korven. As this episode has actually got me interested in him, so that's really cool. Hooray! K9 actually has something to offer in some regards, and Darcy basically sees the Professor and Darius sees these characters. I keep forgetting their names. And sees them and basically decides to run up to the Korven, just tries to distract him by just basically like pushing his mind control abilities, which will distract him from K9. So K9 can, even though he's confused and weak, Starkey, actually I tell you what, the beans things does actually play into the story again. I do apologise, I made a mistake. As Starkey realises that K9's confused, and to try and get him to fight the Korven, basically analyses that the Korven is actually a baked beans, so warm up the baked beans. And so K9 in its confused state can shoot a beam, and Darcy destroys its... oh wait, that happens before. Sorry. Darcy destroys this device, this freezing device, which keeps the Korven basically perpetuated in this timeline. As then he distracts him. Then K9 shoots. And what happens is probably one of the most over-the-top deaths in the series so far. As the creature kind of like starts glowing up, spins around, and then just explodes in a burst of white light. And the story ends. This is what I meant by the concept of Starkey and K9 being homeless is really funny to me. Is the end of this episode has basically the characters reflecting on their time together, and Starkey is like, I've got to go back now. Me and K9 are still homeless. And Geordie, who was offered by Darius earlier on in the episode that, there's a spare room if you want it, talks to the Professor. He's like, there's a spare room here. Why couldn't Starkey live here? And the Professor's like, that's a great idea. Hold on. And he goes this thing on his computer. He's like, this is kind of illegal, but if you're smart like me, and in like less than a minute, probably like 30 seconds, the Professor clears Starkey's record. He is now a free man. He couldn't do that before. The Professor willingly let this kid to be a homeless person. Like, do you see what I mean? I mean, sure, he is breaking the law and stuff, and it is like thing, but the way it's portrayed in this episode, it's so easy. That should have been a concept for an episode itself, trying to break his, get rid of his track record. But no, it's literally just done. Which kind of makes the entire homeless storyline really funny to me personally. And that basically ends the story with the last scene having Starkey in the room and K9 farting. Because that's what we want in a K9 show, apparently. So that's the Korven. Overall, there's bits I like. I like the idea and the concept of the Korven, and the story doesn't like overdo itself like I think the previous 2 episodes did. Try to just chuck everything and see what sticks. No, this episode does try to take its time to develop its characters and just get it done. But I don't feel like praising a story for doing just the bare minimum here. It feels very half-assed, feels very bland for the most part. There's nothing really noteworthy about this episode, so I'm still waiting for at least decent. Okay, I guess it is decent. It's not, like, it's not horrible. I can't hate it. It's just, I didn't feel anything whilst watching it. Visually, it's alright. Writing, it's alright. It was just really the villain that I was but I'm curious about. I'm looking forward to see when they return. So that's the Korven. Pretty near. So join me next time when Earth is invaded by a creature that can mind control the population of Earth. But the Doctor's not here to save the day. It's up to our group of characters to stop the 4, 5, 6. So I'll see you next time for Torchwood's Children of Earth. And I'll see you next time on the Doctor Who Marathon. Ta-ra.